What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Berk, aka Dansgway here, and welcome back to the latest Attack Only adventure on the channel, in which I try to complete Final Fantasy IX using only the attack command, and trying to do it without using any of the magic stone abilities that we have available. So in the first session we kind of set things up, got it all going. Thank you all so much for the support on that first episode. The like ratio compared to the views is really good. And so it's clear that a lot of you did indulge me and drop a like on that first part. Thank you all so much, I really appreciate it. The first part was a priority, but if you are feeling so inclined, please do remember to hit that like button to continue to support the series. And as always, for this specific type of material, there is early access available on Patreon if you would like to check that out. So, without much further ado, let's continue the game and see how far we can get. Apologies in advance if I sound a little bit unwell here. I really need to get this recording done at this stage. I didn't want to put it off any longer. So my voice hasn't completely recovered, but hopefully it should be okay and should be able to get us through this next episode, and it should be back to kind of fully normal for part 3 of the series. So in the first episode, we managed to get all the way to the end of the ice cavern, and we beat Black Waltz number 1 and the Sea Lion, and then I got a chance to redeem myself by naming Garnet something more appropriate after naming her Elma by accident all those years ago, thinking that this was just a temporary name. But it's already been good to see a lot of people just kind of both amused but also annoyed about the fact that I named her Elma again. And that's kind of what I was going for. And so yes, she will forever be Elma on this channel. That's just a Dansgway specific bit of lore / a meme on this channel. And so yes, I did name her Elma, and things will continue that way for pretty much any Final Fantasy IX playthrough I do in the future. I think it's just too good. I have to stick to it now. From here, it is time to head towards the village of Dali, so let's do that. And here is our first encounter in the open world. I kept things on like high speed at the moment, assuming that I'd be able to blast through. Truth is, until Zidane attacks, you don't really get too much momentum. I mean, even with Steiner, it's not the greatest amount of damage. So the random encounters out in the world, they're not causing any problems, but it's not like a one-hit KO yet either. So yeah, I am of course visiting a few little sites here and there. There's a few little bits and pieces to pick up. I'm not going to show you every single one of these. Usually they're not super important, but obviously I'm following along the Jagged guide as I mentioned previously, and that gives me the best chance to make sure I don't miss any potential piece of equipment or important items or things like that for the game. And so for now at least, in terms of combat, there isn't too much to do, but there are some options for buying some equipment and to pick up some items and chests and that kind of thing. So let's have a look at what I did here. We can pick up an iron sword for Steiner, which is something that we're definitely going to do here. The Jagged guide mentions something about basically there's like a gill farming trick that you can do here by buying certain amounts of things and then taking them to the synthesis shop, synthesizing them, selling them for more money and that kind of thing. I refrained from using any of that kind of stuff really for now. I think I did like a few of them, but in general, like, because I can basically fight things whenever I need to, I figured it won't be too much of a problem, so I didn't really work too hard on trying to like do any guild tricks for now. And so of course, in general, the idea here is to buy anything I can that gives me a boost, and particularly gives me any kind of elemental protection. But when I'm specifically leveling up, I try to equip the things that give me the best sort of passive stat boost. So one of the things I generally have struggled with so far is sometimes remembering when to switch in and out. You might have something, for example, that reduces like thunder damage by 50%, and you might need that for a certain boss, but if you keep that equipped in general, then you're missing out on equipping something different that might give you better stat boost when you level up. So switching between them, like having a boss battle kind of setup versus a random encounter setup, they're not always the same thing. And so that's one thing that I try to sort of be careful of in general. There were a few times where I equipped something for a boss battle and I just continued on even though I should have changed it. But so far at least it hasn't caused me any major problems. Now, one of the more important things to pick up, I think it's going to become relevant later. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be super useful, but on paper it seems like it will be. And that's the whole Stellazio things. The whole like zodiac signs. Like the first one you can pick up in Dali Village is Aries, and I believe if you pick up enough of them, the first time you get to a particular point in the game, you can get a nice weapon for Steiner, which might be very useful. So that's one set of items that I've been trying to make sure that I don't miss along the way. And so from here, as I say, it was a lot of story, a lot of dialogue, a lot of walking around, a lot of picking up items and treasure chests and that kind of thing. There's a few things that are potentially useful, but nothing like too crazy. You can pick up an iron helm, for example, that you couldn't have previously brought from the shop, which is quite useful. But in general, what I will do is skip ahead to the next boss battle that we're going to have, and that is against Black Waltz number 2. Alright, so for this one, I don't think I need anything particularly fancy. I just kind of equipped the best stuff that I had. And we go into this fight against Black Waltz 2, who has 1030 HP. So for this particular battle, I'm going to do an additional voiceover here because some interesting things happened, and it's one of these nice opportunities to share some knowledge with you guys that I learned while making this series. So when I originally did this fight, you're going to notice that Steiner is doing about 50% more damage to this enemy than Zidane is, and this really confused me initially because I was thinking Zidane is almost 10 levels higher, but more importantly, Zidane has 1 more strength point than Steiner, but Steiner has 2 more attack points than Zidane. But I thought based on these numbers, there's no way that Steiner should be hitting for basically 50% more damage than Zidane is. It just doesn't make sense. And so I started to try and think of why this was happening before actually looking it up. And my first assumption was that Steiner was using a weapon type that gave him much more favorable damage against, for example, a flying enemy or a mage or something like that. And turns out that assumption was basically incorrect here. So let me break down why this is happening, because this is going to be both important for me in the run, and it's going to be important for anyone watching along, trying to understand what's going on and to better their understanding of the mechanics of the game. So it's probably going to run longer than the battle, but I should definitely cover this. And so let's get into it and talk about these attack damage numbers and why they're happening the way that they are. So first of all, yes, there is a distinction between weapon types and their damage formulas. So there's 4 different types here. The first is fork/hammer. I'm going to talk about that one later when we pick up Quina. The second is sword/rod/staff/spear/flute/claw. The third is dagger/double-edged sword, and the fourth is racket. The 2 that concern us are obviously the sword one and the one that features dagger/double-edged swords. For now, just to make things easier, let's assume that both of them are using the same type of weapon. So on the one hand, we have Zidane, who has 1 higher strength point. On the other hand, we have Steiner, who has 2 more attack points. And you're going to see why it ends up being the case that Steiner does so much more damage at the moment than Zidane. So if we take the regular sword formula, the way that it works is that you basically have a base attack point, and then you have like a multiplier kind of thing. And so for the base attack, I'm going to write some of these annotations up to help you, but the base attack is basically the weapon's attack stat minus the target's defense. And apparently in many cases the target's defense is 10. That's what they've said. Probably going to change based on boss battle, but for this battle, the Black Waltz's defense is indeed 10. And so what we're going to do, let's do Steiner's for example here. His weapon attack is now 16 because he has the iron sword to work with. So his base attack here is going to be 6. 16 minus 10 is 6. This number is then going to get multiplied by something. There's a lower limit and there's an upper limit. That's why of course we see some damage variation here. And the lower limit is basically going to be his strength stat, which in this case is 25. And so what we have is a minimum of 6 times 25, and that means he's going to do 150 damage as his lower limit. I'm not going to go into the higher limit to not overcomplicate things right now, but his base damage, his lowest damage, should be 150. Now let's look at Zidane's stats. Let's assume that he also has a sword type weapon, but the attack stat is 14, because his current weapon has a 14 in terms of its attack stat. If we do 14 minus 10, his base attack is 4, and then we do the multiplier, so his strength is 26, so it's 1 higher than Steiner's, but if you do 4 times 26, you only get 104. And so what this means is that basically the attack stat of the weapon seems to play a bigger role in the damage that you do compared to your strength stat. And that is why at the moment, even though Zidane is 9 levels higher than Steiner and has a better strength stat, he's doing almost 50% less damage than Steiner is. And that's going to be important to know moving forward. Now, the second part of this is that Zidane is not using a sword, he's using a dagger, and eventually he'll probably start using some double-edged swords. The way that the multiplier works here is the first part of the formula is the same, and again, that's why things don't really change too much based on this weapon here. But this time, the multiplier is going to be his strength stat plus his spirit stat divided by 2. So it's the average of his strength and spirit. And in this case, there's only 1 point between them. His strength is 26, his spirit is 27, divided by 2 is 26.5. The game should round that down to 26, and therefore, in terms of the raw mass of the formula, it doesn't really matter at the moment whether we're using his strength stat or this other formula for the dagger/double-edged sword is going to give you the same answer. And so that's a general explanation of why that's happening. The sort of damage variation / upper limit involves a little bit more calculation. It's not like difficult math, but for the upper limit of swords, it's going to be the strength stat plus strength plus level divided by 8. And that's going to be like your second multiplier. So once again, using annotations, I'll try to provide some more like exact examples of what you're seeing here. But that's the reason why you're seeing the damage play out the way it is. And this really confused me initially because up until this point, up until we gave Steiner the new weapon, Zidane, as expected, was doing more damage than Steiner. So I was like, this is perfectly normal. And then when it suddenly flipped in this fight, I was like, wait a minute, on paper this shouldn't be happening because I didn't know the formulas. I was thinking that surely with such a big level advantage, plus the fact that his strength stat is literally higher, just having 2 less attack on his weapon shouldn't cause him to do 50% less damage. And I thought there must be some other factors at play. At one point, I even got worried that I wasn't using magic stones, but Steiner at this point had learned Bird Killer, and I was scared that some abilities are passive and they still have an effect even if you don't equip the magic stone. And I thought I'd activated something where Steiner was basically doing 50% more damage to flyers now. And so I had to spend like half an hour just absolutely checking that that wasn't the case. And so I did do another version of this fight while taking off the armor that he had equipped that had Bird Killer on there. And he still did the same damage. So it's definitely nothing like that. It's just the literal fact that the attack stat is really, really potent in terms of damage that you do. And so even having 16 attack versus 14 attack can lead to a major difference in the final output when you're playing. So I want to share that information with you guys. We will see the fork / hammer damage multiplier stuff a bit later on, but for now at least, that is the reason you're seeing the discrepancy, and I hope that helps you to understand things a little better, because if again, like me, you don't have this type of in-depth knowledge about the game, that could have been pretty confusing for you guys, and it's nice to understand why that's happening at this early stage of the run. Then, before long, we make it onto the cargo ship and we are going to face off against Black Waltz 3 very soon. So we need to make sure that we are prepared for that one. I was generally looking to see if I had anything that gave me like elemental protection. The silk shirt was a good choice for Zidane here because it gave him some thunder protection. And so I used the rubber helm as a result for Steiner. And so he has both wind protection and lightning protection. So I thought that's probably going to help a little bit. So the one disadvantage here is that we only have 3 characters. We don't have Garnet with us this time. And Black Waltz number 3 has slightly more HP than its predecessor at 1,128. So let's get into this fight and see how the 3 lads did against the final Black Waltz. Alright, here we go. Let's see what happens when Vivi is in trance, because obviously Vivi's trance is very magic-centric. 90 damage there. A little bit less than the previous one. So now it's leapt up and become difficult to hit. That's a bit of a problem. So still only 19 damage from Vivi. Obviously can't expect too much here. Thundara comes in. Steiner is protected, as is Zidane. And so Vivi is going to get KO'd pretty quickly here. And given how hard it is to hit this Black Waltz, I was pretty worried at this point. It's kind of odd that Vivi managed to make both of the hits, and Steiner and Zidane didn't manage to make any of them while it was airborne, but let's see. The fact that it's hitting everyone probably is not so bad here. I mean, Vivi was never going to make it anyway, but we basically rely on doing all of our damage while it's grounded, because once it jumps up, it just becomes too evasive. So at this stage, I was thinking, is it better to just wait until it comes down? The good thing here is that all of this damage that we've been taking did push us to a trance. And so I decided to just wait and see if it comes back down anyway. Zidane's tankiness here definitely playing a role. And obviously the trance gauge will go up all the time as well. So let's go again, see if we can land a hit with Steiner. Nope. So it's programmed to basically go back up after every hit. But when in trance, Steiner made the hit. So I don't know if trance also guarantees that you make the hit, because Vivi also made both of the hits. And so I guess that's another benefit of trance, you don't miss. And so Steiner comes in with 2 trance hits at 400 each. And with that, it's almost done anyway. So thankfully, even though Steiner's going to get KO'd here as well, and Zidane's the only one left, that massive 800 damage while in trance made a big difference here. And thanks to that, we managed to get through. So there we go. Trance really showing its worth there. It's something that, again, like when we get into more difficult battles and stuff that needs repeats that I'm really struggling on, then I'll see like how we can potentially use the trance to our advantage. Can we get multiple trances in one battle? Can you prep it so that your trance gauge is almost full and then the boss triggers it off and that kind of thing? For now, again, I've ignored it. I'm just kind of going with the flow. But it's increasingly showing how really powerful it is. I mean, on the one hand, he did 4 times as much damage as Zidane's regular attack, despite supposedly being weaker than him right now, I believe. And also, he actually managed to guarantee that he made the hit. So 2 very important things there for the scope of this challenge. So yeah, with that, Black Waltz 3 was also defeated, and we could now move on to the big city of Lindblum. So this place is really large, but there's going to be 2 main things that I think need to probably be shown and discussed here before we can move on. Because in terms of like legit boss battles, there isn't actually like that much going on here. So the first thing I will show is the fact that this place has quite a kitted out weapon shop, plus more importantly, I guess, the synthesis shop. So this is where we're finally going to have the ability to find some equipment or make some equipment that could give us some nice stat boosts and some nice like passive stat bonuses when we level up. So let's take a look at the whole like item, equipment, synthesis shop situation in Lindblum. There are a few little things to pick up along the way. One of them is a leather plate that you can pick up, which Zidane can wear, and the other thing of note is a glass armlet, which I believe reduces water damage, so it might be a little bit useful as well. Okay, so once you enter the synthesis shop, you can pick up some silver gloves from like the workbench thing. And then from there, there are going to be, of course, some options for you to potentially get some cool equipment. Okay, so we have the butterfly sword, we have the ogre, and obviously here, the ogre, I think, is of more interest to me. We have the desert boots. Once again, I'm going to put in some annotations for anything I do buy here, because there's just too many numbers to remember. Like, for example, the glass buckle gives you like 4 or 5 passive stat bonuses for certain stats when you level up. But yeah, there's definitely some good things here that I tried to make use of, and so I did definitely end up getting a few of these. So just as one example, for this glass buckle, for example, if you do equip this one, you end up getting a +1 strength bonus, a +1 magic bonus, +2 spirit bonus, and a +5 magic evasion bonus. So once again, this doesn't mean that the stat goes up by that amount of points every time you level up, but it just generally increases the kind of upper limit that you can reach if you have the stuff equipped. And so ultimately, what I decided was to basically not do all of that stuff right now. Clearly there were some important things to do, but I wanted to make sure I completed the Festival of the Hunt first. So this is like the main event that happens in Lindblum. And for this one, there are 3 different rewards, and one of these rewards is definitely better than the others. And so if Zidane wins, it's 5,000 gil. If Vivi wins, it's the Theatre Ship card. And if Freya wins, it's the Coral Ring. The Coral Ring is really nice because it absorbs lightning damage, which is obviously going to be very useful to us. And it gives a +2 spirit and a +3 magic defense bonus if you have it equipped. And so this was the one I wanted mostly for the elemental like absorption. I thought that could be huge for upcoming battles. And so basically I did the Festival of the Hunt, in which I didn't move, I didn't do anything, because obviously I don't want Zidane to win. And luckily for me, the first time I tried it, Freya ended up winning. So sometimes Vivi can win. If Vivi wins, you have to reset. But for me, the first time I did it, Freya did win. And so as a result of that, I was able to receive the Coral Ring, which was great. And so with that, Freya is in our party as well. And if she wants to, she can equip the Coral Ring. We're definitely putting her up to the front row. And we'll see if we can get any good equipment for her as well. So she gets a +2 and a +3 there. And so before I leave, it is time to go to the shops and stock up. I wanted, of course, things like softs that I could definitely need. I forgot if petrification carry through outside of battle. Honestly, if it doesn't, then there's not much I can do about it. I wouldn't have needed it. But I thought, let me just get a few extra things anyway, just in case. I had a decent chunk of gil. I thought it would be enough to get what I needed done. And so one of the main things I obviously wanted was the upgraded weapon for Zidane. So let's have a look at the weapon shop, or the equipment shop. I could have got the mithril dagger, but if you have 2 mage mashes, you can make something better. And so I thought maybe that's the one that's worth getting. And so again, looking through here is just a mix of trying to find things that I knew was going to be useful. What I'm doing here is there is that trick that I mentioned, and I'll give you like a quick explanation of what that is. At this point in the game, you can utilize the cotton robe synthesis trick to earn some extra gil, but only if you stocked up on wrists while you're in the village of Dali. So basically you buy the steepled hats and the wrists, and then you make the cotton robes, and then the cotton robe that you can synthesize sells for a lot more than the cost of your ingredients, and so you can end up making a little bit of money here. And so what you're seeing is that process. This was the first time I ever tried it, so I thought, okay, that's cool, I can make a little bit of extra gil. But ultimately, like, I didn't decide to, oh, let's really utilize this and farm for this and try to make tons of gil or anything like that. But it was something I did kind of experiment with in Limblin the first time. So there was a little bit of back and forth during this stuff to make sure that I got everything I needed and I could kind of pull off the robe trick correctly and that kind of thing. And so I definitely went for some desert boots because it did give me some earth protection. The more of the elements I can cover, the better that's going to be for me. So obviously that's going to be a good addition. So I made sure that I got my 2 mage mashes, which were obviously the ingredients I needed for the ogre, which was going to give me a nice boost here. Definitely wanted that. The only thing here is that you can't benefit from the added status. So if you look at like the help text for it, it says added status darkness, which would obviously be excellent to have. But that's the kind of thing where you need the magic stones for it. I don't know if there's any weapons that will have like the ability to do things like that without needing magic stones. I'm not too sure. But for now, at least, I can't benefit from something like darkness when I use the ogre. But it's not the end of the world. It's still definitely a far more powerful weapon than what I have normally. And so it's definitely worth getting. Other than that, it was a lot of cross-referencing, like in the synthesis shop, which one I need and which ones I don't need. And then referencing that with the whole like stat increase page and that kind of thing. Just trying to find like the best things to spend my money on, basically. And so generally in the background, you'll see some of the stuff that I brought and some of the stats that are involved with that. Because I did spend a fair bit of time here, but let's see what I end up equipping once I was done. Because from here, we do have another little section of like more open world and getting to have a little more freedom. So for Zidane, I gave him the steepled hat because that's the one that gives him the best bonus here. His strength does have a +1 as a result. And so anything that gives us a strength boost is going to be needed. Equip the ogre, so already his strength is doing much better, as is his attack. For this one, I don't have like the best options at the moment. The only one that gives me any benefit right now is a leather wrist, so I'm still keeping it. Just anything that helps me get some passive increases for now. For the body, still at the moment, there wasn't anything particularly great. I do have the bronze vest, which gives me a +1 spirit, and I thought that's probably still the best option that I have for now. And I was able to make some yellow scarves, which gave me a +2 for strength. And so I decided to go for that one, because the glass buckle only gives me a +1 for strength. So that was my general setup, and with this I was able to head back out into the open world and start moving towards the next area of the challenge, which is Gizamaluke's grotto. Alright, here we go, out into the open world we go. Now, this time we have a lot more options at our disposal, and the first thing I wanted to do was head straight towards the marsh so that I could pick up Queener and add another party member that could definitely be useful in terms of an attack-only challenge. So let's have a look at this encounter first. Comes in with a crush, 45, no problem here, and a massive 364 damage from Zidane. So no problems here. This trio looks very powerful, and well, Vivi not so much, but Freya and Zidane should be more than capable of handling anything that we could encounter out in the open world here. So yeah, we're straight towards Q's Marsh. And from here, I wanted to recruit Queener because, again, compared to, say, Vivi, Queener was going to be the better option, naturally tankier, and naturally able to do more physical damage using the attack command. And so I'm going to skip through most of the process. I am going to try and catch frogs in general because there are some good benefits depending on how many frogs you catch. And so yeah, I will generally be engaging with like the frog side quest, but I'm not going to show you too much from that because you generally know how it works. The main priority here was to recruit Queener onto the team. Unfortunately, I don't have anything better than the fork for now, but once again, trying to choose the equipment that gives me the best kind of strength boost / passive boosts. And with that, we were already having a relatively easy time with 3 characters, and so with 4, it was going to be pretty breezy around here. So in terms of combat, there wasn't too much to worry about, but I knew that there were some things that I could do before progressing on to Gizamaluke's grotto. So let's have a look at some of the stuff that I got up to before continuing the story. The first thing I did was a little backtrack to get to a place called Pinnacle Rocks. Here you can pick up an elixir and a phoenix down. That's basically all there was to that. I'm going to show you guys some random encounters along the way as we go. But other than that, there was the South Gate that you can visit, which is an area that's actually kind of good because if in the future you need to do any farming, there's one of those like springs here in which you can heal your HP and MP for free. So it creates that nice like farming loop that I previously mentioned to you guys. And then after that, it was time to head to the Chocobo Forest. Now, this was ironic because in my first playthrough, like the first ever time I played Final Fantasy IX and LP'd it for the channel, I remember the whole Chocobo hot, Chocobo cold stuff, and I was like, man, like I don't like this stuff. I'm not interested in it. All of the work that we have to do to get to Ozma in this game, like I just wasn't a fan of it, and so I basically never did it in my main playthrough. I came back years later to do it, and I'm sure many people watching this would have watched those live streams and the Ozma fight as well. But basically, for this particular challenge, obviously, any opportunity to gain any kind of extra items or equipment or anything like that, I was going to take. And one way to do that in this game is with chocographs. And so what I did was go to the Chocobo Forest, get myself some Gazar Greens, and basically get going with the whole Chocobo kind of picking up items and trying to do the chocographs kind of thing. And so again, in the background, I'm going to show you some stuff from that. First of all, just from doing the digging and the points that you get from the digs, there should be some stuff that you can get later on. I think there's something like a protector ring available, for example, but it's a lot of points. So for now, I wasn't trying to chase anything like that. My main priority was to try and get some chocographs so that I could pick up some free items. And so basically, following the guide from Jagged, once again, is brilliant because it tells you at what stage of the game you can do which of the chocographs. And so at the moment, you can do number 1 and number 2. And so the first one, the treasure chest for the first chocograph, contains 2 elixirs, 3 high potions, 4 ethers, and 2 pairs of Germinus boots. So again, Germinus boots are pretty good. I sometimes use them. They give you a +1 on strength and a +2 on evasion. And the second chocograph gets you 5 potions, 5 high potions, 2 tents, and 2 cotton ropes. So that one's not as good, but still, we'll take anything that we can get at this point. I mean, even stuff like 4 ethers, if you're not going to use them for something, you can just sell them for 4,000, and that's already also beneficial. And so yes, I did engage with Chocobo hot and cold, and I'll be continuing to do so for basically most of the game so that I could get as many of these extra things as possible. And that definitely took me a little while, but after I did, it was on to Gizamaluke's grotto. First things first, I love the music here, it's so damn good. This area in general, there's a few mandatory fights that you have to do alongside any random encounters, so let's have a look at the first one. There's these black mages that we have to deal with, so Zorn and Thorn show themselves, and they set them on us. And let's see how this goes. Obviously, we're going to be dealing with some elemental magic, but we have a decent mix of just stuff that helps us with our strength, but also a few things here and there that give us some elemental protection as well. But in terms of the elemental protection, I wasn't prioritizing it at all unless I knew I was facing a boss that was using a certain element. So for now, it's not a huge deal. So what I will do, as you see more of Gizamaluke's grotto, I want to talk a little bit about Queener and the way that Queener's damage works. What you're going to see throughout the playthrough is that Queener can do quite a big range of damage for any given attack, and that's something that I was always a bit curious about. I don't remember if I ever kind of figured it out in the LP or I mentioned what it was, but it's basically randomized between the maximum possible and more of the minimum kind of possible. And so it can vary from like incredibly horrible damage to more normal damage. But because Queena's like mid to upper range is so much higher than Vivi's, for example, given the choice between using Quina or Vivi, I would definitely use Quina instead for my party. So there is a good post on GameFAQs by someone called Radion1231 from 16 years ago. And it basically says that all forks and Sinner's Hammer use the following formula. So I'll put this up as an annotation as well. The base is the weapon's attack power minus the target's defense, in most cases 10. But the bonus is where it differs. So for a normal weapon, the bonus ranges from their strength value to their strength value plus their level plus strength divided by 8. But for the fork or Sinner's Hammer, the bonus will range from 1 to strength plus level plus strength divided by 8 minus 1. And so you can see here that for the normal weapon, the lowest value is from their strength value. But for the fork, the lowest value is 1 for the bonus. They also were nice enough to throw in an example of what a normal damage range would look like versus what Queena's looks like for the same stats and attack power. And so for this one, it can range anywhere from 260 to 338 for the normal damage, but for Quina, it can range from anywhere from 13 to 325. And so you can see the lower end is absolutely atrocious, but it can potentially do normal damage. And even if you take like the midpoint of the random, like 160 damage in this situation is probably still better than what Vivi would be able to do. And so that's a general idea of how Queena's damage will work, and that's why you'll see it kind of fluctuate so much throughout the game. I'm not sure if we can get anything, I'm not sure if we can use anything with Quina that isn't a fork. If I do find something like that, I think I definitely prefer it. But for now at least, I haven't researched it and I don't know, so we'll have to see. And so after all of that, we will move on to a serious boss here. We are going to be fighting Gizamaluke. So obviously I did a little bit of research in advance here, and I saw that it has moves that are water based. And so I tried to obviously equip anything that gave me some water resistance. And this was also a battle in which I tried to see if I could get like, you know, multiple equipment that gave 50% water damage reduction, and if they stack. The answer is no. You can only use one of those at any given time, but it was worth a shot. I thought I'd have a look anyway. So in general, looking through, I tried to see if I had more than one equipment for any given character that could reduce the water damage by 50%. So for example, for someone like Zidane, you could use a headgear to reduce the damage, but I didn't want to do that because the steepled hat is the one that gives you the greater strength boost. And so I kept his steeple hat on, and I chose to use the glass armlet as his water protection instead. So it's a little bit of juggling around for that stuff, but obviously the general idea is to make sure everybody has some kind of water protection before trying to fight Gizamaluke. So let's see how the fight went. At this point, I hadn't done any more farming. Once again, we're going to tackle any farming when we get to that stage. If I find like a particularly tough battle in which I really need to go above and beyond the level, then we'll see. But for now, at least, we'd found a nice equilibrium, and obviously Zidane being as powerful as he is, plus having things like the Ogre, was definitely helping us out. So let's have a look at this fight. Now, just before I went through the door, I encountered this enemy, which looked quite interesting. The Entice ability missed, thankfully, but it can give itself more attack power. So it took 200 damage, is still there, took 400 damage, is still there. So it took almost 800 damage, almost 1,000 damage, and it was still alive. So that's actually a particularly tough random encounter. Poor Vivi got KO'd, but yeah, we'll just bring him back and just go straight in for the attempt. So that enemy can be a little bit difficult, but not enough to endanger our party or anything like that. Okay, here we go. I turned off like the high speed here just so I could see the battle fully. As I say, 3,175 damage to take out here. $200 damage from Freya is a pretty good start, only 16 from Vivi. But a nice 378 from Zidane, and well, to be fair, he's getting closer to being in trance. which is good. I don't know if the trance only goes up against bosses. Maybe because the random encounters have been hitting me that much, because his trance bar kind of looks the same as what it was at the end of the Black Waltz fight. It's something I need to pay more attention to. So yeah, thankfully water does half damage there, 114. At these kind of levels it makes such a big difference. But that crash move is pretty powerful. Vivi being on the back row was nice there though. Again, keeping him on the back just so that he basically takes as many hits as he can. But Queen are getting picked on quite a lot here. Not that big a problem because obviously the primary attacker is Zidane, then Freya, and then Queen. So as long as Zidane and Freya stay alive for as long as possible, we have a chance. But yeah, Freya already down to like one more attack here. If she gets hit by another crash, she'll probably die. Poor Vivi getting KO'd once again. Vivi's struggling to make it through fights, even on the back rows. HP just so low. And there's the trance. So once again, I think trance is going to make quite a big difference in this fight. We were already doing 378 before trance. Let's have a look. Bad damage from Queen there. We've been a little bit unlucky, I think, with Queen's damage, but that was a clutch evasion. That made up for it somewhat. But Freya being taken out was not good here. We basically have to rely on Zidane to finish the job here. And he can only survive one more attack after that. So that was a little better from Queen at 88. But Queen is now dead too. It's all up to Zidane and Trance. Is this going to be enough? It is. So thankfully, same as before with Steiner's Trance, Zidane being in Trance saved the day here. I think without Trance we probably still could have done it, but we would have needed slightly better RNG perhaps to be able to get through, maybe a critical or something like that. But thankfully I managed to make it through first time thanks to the powerful weapon that we have and the Trance ability. So yeah, it was only Zidane that made it through, but that's all we needed. And so with that we can continue the story. Next up, it is indeed mostly story stuff. There is a weapon called the Maltina Racket, which I did want to get because it seemed more like attack oriented. And potentially, I did test it out a little bit later on. I'm not sure about this. I'm gonna have a look and annotate this in. But I believe it might do the same damage from the back row as it does from the front, and so that might actually make Garnet a little more useful in the run for sure. Because if she's doing more attack damage anyway, compared to someone like Vivi because of her weapon, and she's able to do full damage from the back row, that's a pretty nice combination. So we'll have a look into that when we move on. But for now, at least, I definitely made sure that I picked it up. And so one thing that I did not realize that I obtained while doing Chocobo Hot and Cold, which is apparently something that's very rare to find, is this extension thing. I came across it during recording, and I was like, wait a minute, when did I get this again? And I looked it up, and it literally says... right now I'm showing you guys when I picked it up in the background anyway, but it says the extension is earliest obtained from the Chocobo Hot and Cold minigame, but is so rare that the player may have completed the minigame numerous times over several playthroughs and never come across one. And so yes, it turns out I got extremely lucky and managed to get one of these extensions from Chocobo Hot and Cold. It's funny because like I feel like with these playthroughs I do happen to sometimes get incredible RNG. It's something I completely didn't realize until literally recording this voiceover. Then I was like, holy shit, wait a minute, what is this extension thing? I didn't really question it, but it turns out that that's how I ended up getting it, and so I had to kind of scroll back and make sure that that was how I got it. But yeah, I did actually dig it up. So now, her strength is 18 and her attack is 17, which is not too bad considering she's so much more of a mage than someone like, obviously, Zidane. So Garnet basically places herself into more of a mid-tier physical attacker compared to at least the likes of Vivi. So that was pretty cool. And so now that I was back out into the open world again, there were some more chocographs that I could pick up, and chocograph number 4 contains the Reef ability, which allows me to enter shallower water. And so this means that I can actually do chocograph number 10 as well, which gives me 8 potions, 4 Phoenix Downs, 3 Ethers, and a Magician Robe. You could also do 11, but I kind of forgot that one for now, and so I'll get it at some point later on. But 10 was the other one that I ended up doing for now. And so with that, we are going to enter Burmecia and try to complete Disc 1 in the Final Fantasy IX Attack Only challenge. Alright, here we go. Burmecia, the Realm of Eternal Rain. Another great soundtrack. Like, the atmosphere of this track is so nice. Here we have a pretty significant battle to come towards the end, but mostly it's about navigation and knowing which of the chests have mimics in them. So first of all, we pick up the Cancer Stellazio thing, make sure that we're still on track for that one. But other than that, once again, it's thanks to Jagged that I was able to look through and see which of the chests are trapped and which ones are not. And so it was a case of basically looking through and picking up as many of the things as possible in Burmecia en route to what is going to be the final battle of this disc. So before we get there, there is a armory area in which if you go in with Freya, you will pick up a Mithril Spear, and that's one of the more important things to pick up before we kind of wrap things up here. We equip her with that, which gives her a nice little boost to attack. It's only 2, but every little counts. And then from there we head over to the Moogles, and we can get a couple of things that can help us from the Mog Shop. The first being a Needle Fork for Quina to give us a bit more attack, so to help push up that sort of random range of damage to the upper end a little bit more. Raise the floor, let's say, of damage for Quina. I picked up the Barber as well. I thought it would give me a little bit of a boost. Might be useful as well. And other than that, I think that was it. There is a lightning staff at the back of the room, but I think anything that has like a staff designation is probably still never going to be that great for attack only. But then Stiltskin appears, and I always make sure to buy my stuff from Stiltskin because in the future you could benefit from that. We'll talk more about that later, but for now I continue to engage with Stiltskin as much as I can. And with that, it is time to face the final boss of Disc 1. Okay, let's have a look at this equipment here. One thing I knew was that I would be receiving some lightning damage, and so I had to make sure that I equipped something which protected me from thunder. And this is where the coral ring comes in super handy. So remember I was talking about that for the Festival of the Hunt? That's one of the reasons we want to make sure we have that, because Beatrix hits very hard, and if you can heal from the lightning, that's definitely going to be super useful. So I made sure I equipped that. It was generally lightning protection, plus making sure that Zidane, my kind of best character here, had the ability to absorb lightning damage. So let's head into this fight and see how we did. Okay, here we go. 3,630 HP here. That is a decent chunk indeed, and her attacks are powerful, as you're about to see. So here comes the first one. It's called Shock. 798 damage. I saw that straight off the bat and I was like, okay, even Zidane with 683. That's probably not going to work very well. But he did 430 damage, which is pretty nice. And there was a clutch little evasion there from Freya. So we fought back well, but I thought if Shock is doing that much damage and she's able to evade some of my hits, this could be a big problem. So 224 for a regular hit. And this time there's no sign of trance either, so I don't have a trance to put me to get me out of trouble, but I do have the coral ring, as you saw, sprung into action there, and helped me to heal back up to maximum HP. And so I think this time it's going to be the coral ring and a little bit of Freya evasion here, honestly, that's gonna help to win the day. Here comes another shock. And Freya is gone. So once again, over 700 damage. It means that Zidane is likely to be one-hit KO'd from this as well. And so I basically, it was a race against time to try and finish her off before she used Shock on Zidane. It's funny that this time Vivi survived as long as he did, but he also gets shocked. And it seems the same damage for basically everyone. But Zidane landed the final hit that he needed to, and Stock Break is one of these moves that, like, it doesn't actually do like legitimate damage, and it's like a story, it's kind of like a preset move that ends the fight and you progress the story. So it was very tight. That shock move is very, very dangerous. I don't know if she always kind of works it from left to right, and Zidane's always the last one to get hit by it, but thankfully I was just about there in time, and it was of course the coral ring as well that helped me out. And Freya managed to get an extra couple of hits in as well thanks to her evasion. So with that, we were able to complete the first disc in Final Fantasy IX Attack Only. So I'm going to wrap up this episode here. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have continued to enjoy the series so far. Looking forward to continuing this and seeing what other challenges are going to come our way. I am generally enjoying the ability to kind of have equipment that's helping me out and the accessories and that kind of thing. So despite the lack of magic stones, we're kind of finding the halfway point and managing to kind of get a setup that's helping us to get through these difficult battles. Because if I didn't have any kind of, if for whatever reason I didn't allow any equipment or accessories, then obviously it was going to be a whole different beast and it was going to look a lot more like Final Fantasy VIII Attack Only. But we don't know. We don't know what kind of challenges are going to come up in this one. There might be some weird, like, specific boss fights that enemy could be immune to physical damage, or it could just be like some other type of mechanic that's going to almost make it completely impossible. We will just have to see how it goes. I'm looking forward to trying out more, and I hope you guys continue to stick with the series and enjoy the new episodes as they come out. So as always, thank you all for the support. If you want to catch these episodes early and support the channel in a massive way, please do check out the Patreon. But I will see you guys next time for more from the Final Fantasy IX Attack Only challenge, and hopefully with a less kind of congested nasal voice. So thank you for bearing with me for this episode, but I really needed to get this recorded and out there to you guys to stay on track. So thank you all for watching. I will see you soon. Take care.